Sometimes I think the relationship between focus mode and focus area is just like pairing your wine with food. Hi everyone, it's Christina from Photosprouts here. Today I'm going to talk about focusing. So in my last video, I've talked about back button focusing, why you want to do it, and how to do it in a Canon R5 camera. As promised in the last video, I will make a video on focus mode, which is this one. But talking about focus mode, I have to also talk about focus area. Focus mode and focus area, they are twins. So, depending on what focus mode you have selected in your camera, you need to pick the most appropriate option for the focus area in order to get the subject in focus. And this is the essence of today's class. Focus mode is the focus option that you set in your camera to focus moving and non-moving subjects. For non-moving, stationary subject, you want to pick single servo or AFS as your focus mode. But if your subject is moving, you want to track it and you want to pick AFC or continuous servo as your focus mode. And depending on what focus mode you have picked, you want to select the appropriate option for the focus area in order to keep your subject in focus. So let's go to the slides. In the end of the video, I'm going to show you how to track moving subject using a Canon R5 camera and a Sony a7 III camera. Okay, ready? Let's go. Okay, we're going to talk about focusing. Focusing is the combined settings of focus mode and the focus area. When you press your shutter button halfway down, the camera will grab the focus, and we call this process autofocusing. Focus mode is telling the camera whether it should lock the focus or continue to update the focus as you keep the shutter button halfway down. Focus area is where the camera grabs the focus on the plane. From my teaching experience, the most challenging part in learning photography is to figure out what focus mode and focus area are called in your own camera. Camera manufacturers do not have a set of unified name for the same type of settings, and this can be very confusing. While most camera brands like Sony and Nikon name the focus mode, Canon calls her focus mode AF operation. As for focus area, Sony calls it focus area, but in Nikon it's called AF area, and in Canon it's called AF method. So now you know what settings I'm referring to when I say focus mode and focus area. Focus mode tells the camera whether to lock or update the focus, and there are basically 4 focus mode in any cameras. AFS, or autofocus single servo, is for photographing non-moving subjects. As you press the shutter halfway down, the camera will grab the focus and lock on it even though you move the camera to recompose the shot. The distance between the camera and the subject needs to be the same, otherwise the subject will be out of focus. In Canon, autofocus single servo is called one shot. Now I press the shutter halfway down to lock the focus, and I'm keep holding the shutter button halfway down and move the camera to recompose the shot. When I'm ready, I'll press down the second half to take the picture. As long as the distance between the subject and my camera does not change, the subject will remain sharp. Now, I'm going to show you what will happen if you change the distance between the camera and the subject when you recompose the shot. So now let me start over. I'm pressing the shutter halfway down to grab the focus, and then I move my camera towards the dog. You can see that it becomes out of focus. So if you're on AFS, make sure you do not change the distance between the subject and the camera. AFC, or autofocus continuous servo, is for photographing moving subjects. Canon calls it a different name, which is servo. The camera will keep updating the focus as you recompose the shot, and this is great if the subject is moving, because the camera will continuously update the focus as you track the subject. Now let me change to servo, okay, which is equivalent to AFC in other cameras. All right. Now I'm pressing the shutter halfway down to grab the focus, and notice that you will not hear a beep sound when the camera has found the focus. And then I'll move my camera to recompose. You can see that the focus has been updated, and it's now on Snow White, but not the dog. The camera will keep updating the focus when autofocus continuous servo is used. So never use it on a non-moving subject. AFA, or autofocus automatic, is when the camera looks for the subject and decides if it should choose single or continuous servo, and I never use it. MF is manual focus, so you rotate the focus ring on the lens until the subject is in focus. Don't mix up the focus ring with the zoom ring. When you rotate the zoom ring, you're changing the focal length of the lens. Manual focus is widely used in macro photography or when the camera has a hard time grabbing the focus. Nowadays, you do not need to use your eyes to determine whether the subject is in focus or not. You can use focus peaking. With focus peaking, the parts that are in focus will be highlighted. Well, in general, autofocus single servo and autofocus continuous servo are what you will frequently use. And to toggle fast between these two modes, learn to use back button focusing instead of going into the menu every time. I have a tutorial to share with you why and how to use back button focusing, and I'll put the link in the description. I'll be super happy if you can like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you! Okay, now you've understood what the 4 focus modes are. Next, we'll dive into focus area. In your camera menu, you'll see these terms: Dynamic AF area, 3D tracking, Spot AF, Expand AF, and blah blah blah. Well, honestly, I think they only leave more confusion, and I only see them as marketing terms. I think the best way to learn anything is to break down massive information into meaningful categories. So no matter what camera you're using, all focus area options can be classified into 3 types: wide or tracking, zone, and spot. For wide or tracking focus area options, the camera will automatically search for the subject in the entire frame and grab the focus. So in Sony, the wide or lock-on AF, expand, flexible spot is the wide or tracking focus areas. In Canon, the tracking or the auto selection in the older camera models are the wide and the tracking focus areas. And in Nikon, the focus areas are the auto area or the 3D tracking options. As for the spot, the photographer will manually select one single focus point on the frame. Usually, I'll compose the shot first and then move the focus point until it is lining up with the subject. For Sony, spot focus area is equivalent to flexible spot or expand flexible spot. In Canon, spot focus area is spot AF, one point, or expand AF area. In Nikon, it's just called single point. Now, let's pair up the focus mode and the focus area with a type of subject. If you're photographing non-moving subject, you should choose autofocus single servo as your focus mode and spot as your focus area. By this, you can move the focus point manually so that it is in line with the subject. You can move the camera to recompose the shot while you press the shutter halfway down. The focus is still locked on the bird, which is the subject. If you choose the wide or the zone focus area instead of the spot, your camera might just determine where the focus point should be, and it may not be in line with the subject. Now, if you're photographing moving subjects, you should choose autofocus continuous servo as your focus mode and select wide or tracking as the focus area. By doing so, you're relying on the camera's technology to track the subject and keep it in focus. For tracking moving subjects in a Canon R5 camera, press the Q button on the camera body. Step 1 is to change your AF method to tracking, okay, so that the camera will look for the eye of the subject in the entire frame. And depending on you choose from a human, animals, it will look for the eye of that particular subject. If you have updated the firmware, you can now choose vehicles as your subject. Okay, this is step 1. Step 2 is to change your AF operation to servo. And servo is autofocus continuous servo in a Canon world. And step 3, go to the drive mode and select high speed continuous, really high speed, or high speed. I'll pick really high speed. And you're all set. Hi, I'm on Paseo Padre Parkway and I'm going to photograph the I've also tried panning by using a longer shutter speed of 1/30th of a second. To learn more, you can sign up for an Intermediate to workshop. For tracking moving subjects in a Sony a7 III camera, press the function key on the camera body and you'll see this menu. Go to drive mode and select continuous shooting. You can choose between very high, medium, and low. I'll choose very high. Okay, so my camera will capture a lot of pictures per second. Okay, and then step 2, there are 3 steps. Okay, so step 2 is to go to the focus mode and select AFC, which is Autofocus Continuous Servo. Step 3, go to focus area and select this one, Lock on AF, Expand Flexible Spot, and you're all set. Alrighty then, you guys ready to take a quiz? So, what are these terms? One shot, 1-point AF, single point, spot AF. These names are very similar, and when I was a beginner, I was often confused by those names. So I'm now going to quiz on you. So tell me what's the difference between these 4 terms. Now here's the answer. So one shot, it's one of the focus modes in a Canon world. And remember, Canon calls her focus mode AF operation. One shot is essentially autofocus single servo in the Canon world. Whereas 1-point AF, single point, spot AF, they're the focus area options in the Nikon and the Canon cameras. So 1-point AF and spot AF, they're the spot focus areas option in the Canon cameras. Just bear in mind that spot AF is very narrow and 1-point AF is slightly wider than spot AF. And single point is the spot focus area in the Nikon world. Did you get the answers correctly? Sometimes I think the relationship between focus mode and focus area is just like pairing your wine with food. You drink red wine with steak and white wine with seafood, right? So for non-moving subject, make sure you select autofocus single servo or AFS as your focus mode and spot as your focus area. As for moving subject, make sure you select autofocus continuous servo, AFC, and the focus area should be wide or tracking. I hope you like this video, so see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye. We're Photosprouts Photography Workshop in San Francisco. Equipment is provided for beginners so that they do not need to buy a camera to attend a photography class.